Hello, welcome to Homo Politicus, which is a flagship show on Enterprise TV here in Lagos. I am Citizen Jones Hussein. Well, Homo Politicus does one thing, interrogates issues that get thrown up by my country, your country. Just so you know, we give context and clarity to that issue. Today, crisscrossing the continents for bilateral cooperation. President Tinubu departs Europe for South Africa. You know, the debate remains an intense one between Puritans and realists. In the world of bipartisan politics and a prudential one, so the travels of a Nigerian president, if you like, the number one citizen, oscillate between a junket and a work and work schedule. Now, the report of President Bola Tinubu leaving Europe for Africa, according to the special advisor to Mr. President, Bayo Onanuga, has it that President Bola Tinubu is to undertake a cross-continental trip from France to South Africa. That trip is for a scheduled December 3rd, 11th session of the Nigeria-South Africa Binational Commission, BNC meeting, alongside President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa. Now, the meeting of this year is significant because it coincides with the 25th anniversary of the Commission, and so there's very little denying the enduring friendship between Nigeria and the Mandela country, regardless of the xenophobic outburst of a few years ago. Having substantive talks on a wide range of issues of mutual interests cannot be overstressed in a 21st century where bilateral, regional, and international matters are prerequisites for a safer and rewarding cooperation for all and sundry. Recall that the 10th session of the Binational Commission, BNC, held at Abuja from November 29th to December 1st, 2021. And as always, areas of mutual interests are essential, and these include political, consular and migration, banking and finance, defense and security, and many more. So, Mr. President, we wish you a safe trip, as you travel to South Africa. Well, today, to break the subject matter with me is the only Emeka Madunagu. Emeka is a journalist and a political commentator. Emeka, one more time, I welcome you.
Yes, my pleasure. Welcome to December.
Yeah, okay, so another trip for Mr. President.
Well, he cannot do more travel. You see, given the... I like to be... yes, I know Nigeria is in serious fiscal situation, but I like to be a realist.
Put simply, Nigeria is in a bad place.
Yes, but I like to be a realist. Mr. President cannot find solutions to the nation's problems by simply sitting in Abuja. Because if he says, okay, he won't travel, he might just be in his the presidential villa, just be sleeping. Have his breakfast, go back to bed and all of that. And you say, okay, he's in the country, but where are we going? The captain is sleeping while the ship is adrift. If you remember Nero, Emperor Nero, who fiddled while Rome burned. So I like to be realistic to the point that Mr. President should actually travel around the world, not on junkets. Where I have an issue is, going with people who have nothing to offer, who have nothing to bring in, who don't have name recognition, whose physical presence cannot, for instance, bring in investment that can even pay for the trip.
Yeah, considering that he himself, Mr. President, had trimmed the size of
yes, but even on this trip to on the trip to France, there were people on the a parade, who waited for Mr. President to alight from the aircraft, upon arrival in Paris. There were people who were said to really have no business, being on the trip. So, I mean, that is where...
Regarding that, we are not learning.
Yes, we are not learning the fact that Nigeria is no longer a beggar nation.
Okay.
Nigeria should not beg for help. Look, there is a point, an adult comes into, his elements. And what you look at, you do a self-appraisal, that, okay, what are the values? Because in the world today is value. What can you sell? What values are you selling? What values are you pushing out? What change can you bring? And sincerely, you see partners. There are all kinds of partners who are willing to work with you. But I, had issue with some of the, things the president, with due respect to him, he said in France, and they were at variance with some of the things he said in Brazil, where he was talking about that a country of starving citizens doesn't care about the climate and weather. And I say that, look, without giving due consideration to climate and weather, the starvation will even get worse because all the efforts of the citizens will amount to nothing. And by the way, why should citizens starve? In the 21st century, you talked about 21st century. In the 21st century, you have scientific discoveries, innovations, to the extent that
these innovations and discoveries are not necessarily inventing a new wheel.
No. Polishing it and adapting it. For instance, I understand that maybe 1 or 2 countries now plant rice in the desert.
Okay.
So, like what China does, look, so that I'm not misunderstood, but you see, if you want to adapt the wheel, if you want to adapt the wheel to your own use, what do? You either buy it from those who have the current design, or you maybe get it as a form of development assistance, or pardon what I'm going to say next, you steal it. Quote unquote.
Well, the word steal here, you are using it loosely.
Quote unquote. So, but the point is that you cannot be stuck at the bus stop.
No, I agree. Emeka, this is in keeping with what Longfellow said years ago. He talked about footprints on the sands of time. They are never made sitting down.
No, we must move. And a nation like Nigeria, I started with saying, a nation like Nigeria should stop classifying itself with smaller nations. I don't want to mention any nation so that people don't take umbrage at my comment. But smaller nations. You see, Nigeria right now should be like the China of Africa. Let's say maybe Brazil of Africa. If you say,
but when you are told Seychelles will be the richest country on the continent.
Yes, because of tourism.
Oh, really?
Tourism. But it doesn't, you see, for me, whatever you can just, lay your hands on, insofar as money is coming in to the public treasury, insofar as when we look at the balance of trade, for instance, go to South Africa now, or let's talk about France, because if you look at the balance of trade, insofar as we are able to export, not just crude oil, petroleum oils, but we're able to actually meet needs, because every country has needs.
Your reference to Mr. President's trip to France brings to mind the fact that Peugeot, a major French presence, was prominent in this country for a while, if you remember. And of course, I remember Michelin Tire.
Yes, Michelin Tire moved to Ghana.
Not because it wanted to.
No. But because you see, for any company to want to leave a country like Nigeria, it's something or a headline story. It's something that is very unthinkable. Because you don't live in a market, a vibrant market like Nigeria with over 200 million people. You don't live in a vibrant market like Nigeria. Tell me, Ghana, a country of 27 million to 30 million people. How many vehicles will you have on the road in Ghana? The only thing that actually took Nigeria basically was electricity. Basically. But tell me, I mean, if you made Ghana a hub of your production. But how much production can you make in Ghana compared to Nigeria?
Yeah, but Ghana attracted Cadbury, if I may mention.
Was it only Cadbury? What about, is it Unilever? Unilever.
A conglomerate.
These are companies that have a history in Nigeria. I mean, they are just, their history and the history of Nigeria.
So Emeka, the man watching us is wondering where we dropped the ball.
Yeah, unfortunately, we became delinquent. Do you know, I saw something yesterday that brought tears to my eyes. You know, somebody was saying, do you know at the point Nigeria was actually, that Niger Dock was building ships.
Okay, here, I remember.
Tears almost dropped from my eyes.
Yeah,
Niger Dock was building ships. Ships. Niger Dock actually started the local content initiative now that is being promoted by the NCBMB. They were building ships. They were repairing ships. You know, ships for commercial navigation, ships for defense.
Yeah.
You know, for the Nigerian Navy. What happened?
And also, please add to that, we had the defense
DICON, Defense Industries Company of Nigeria. When the former president Muhammadu Buhari was the head of state, he visited DICON. Was it not in
the first time?
Yeah, the first time. He visited DICON in 1984. One report I saw, where he said he was confident that Nigeria would, within that period, within a short while, start building tanks that could compete.
Military tanks.
Military tanks.
Yeah.
But what happened? Although thankfully we have a company, Proforce, somewhere in Ogun State, that's producing MRAPs. You know, those vehicles, those APC vehicles, you know, armored personnel carriers, you know, that of course some countries have bought, like Belarus, but from us, some countries in Africa have been able to buy. Innocent, look at Innocent, you know, has also been able to export some of its, you know, hardware, some of its, you know, products to different countries. So yes, we dropped the ball.
Sorry, that Innocent is able to produce bulletproof vehicles in the plus.
Yes,
the market is there.
It's unfortunate we dropped the ball, but we should not dwell on that, because we are not the only ones that dropped the ball. There are countries that were actually, the United States, for instance, you know, if you remove the investments from Saudi Arabia, from China, from Japan, you know, investments in its debts, by the way, in its treasury bills, the United States will be in big trouble. We'll be battling with a heavy deficit. So when you see,
but even at that, sorry, if you permit this,
go ahead.
The United States, we are told, is the heaviest debtor on planet, but again,
debt pays it.
So it is rich.
The problem, you know the difference. One, debt is not a bad thing.
Okay.
But it depends on what you use it for.
Yeah.
Now, here in Nigeria, we borrow with our resources, our natural resources, oil, especially our mainstay, as the collateral. But the United States will raise a bond. It will not touch the natural resources, it will raise a bond. Sell to you. Both of them are debts, but they are of different levels.
Yeah.
The United States will also seek concessionary loans, concessionary debt. But as we seek debt at commercial rates, which are two different things. Now, why? Because the United States has built itself to a level where it can sit at the table with its creditors and look them eyeball to eyeball and negotiate from a point of strength.
Yeah.
We need to rise to that. Because you know what, the whole world is waiting for Nigeria. We need to rise to the point whereby, you see,
but even if you take it to the family unit level, if you have a child who has potential but cannot reach that full potential, you become sickened.
What's the problem? What's the problem? You can stand, the child can support himself, the child can move around, the child can think. All you need to do in today's world, you see, I tell you,
create an enabling environment.
No, do you know, Nigerian youths, by the way, and even creating the enabling environment for themselves. They are not waiting for government any longer. That is why you look at ICT, it's one of the biggest contributors to our GDP. As a matter of fact, you know, ICT is subsumed under services, which is today the biggest contributor to Nigeria's GDP.
Yeah.
And the GDP was said to have risen marginally. ICT is there, powered by Nigerian youths. They now add the soft power of the entertainment industry. You know, so all of those things should tell you that what we need to do, let's look for our areas of comparative advantage and advance them.
Emeka, one troubling oil, fly in that ointment is insecurity.
Yeah, you see,
because if we take care of that, inflows will come.
Yes, insecurity is a major problem. But let's look at the underlying problem. There are 7% are basically, according to a former IG, are basically socio-economic problems. Food to eat, survival, rat race, and all of that. Now, what we need to do is get as many Nigerians as possible working. Get them to be more productive. That's why, with due respect to President Bola Tinubu again, I disagree with the thrust of the tax reform bills, saying that you will tax the rich more and the poor will not pay. I find that classification troubling. Those classifications troubling, because what it assumes is that, rich in terms of what you have, not in terms of your productivity level. And I don't agree with that, because those are the stuff, that's the stuff of things that ruined communist nations, ruined socialist nations.
Yeah, that thrived more on the class struggle.
Yes, yeah. Class struggle. So there are some poor people who are content to be poor. They're okay to be poor. Let the state, just push food to them, push milk to them. Yes, you used to have that in the United Kingdom, in Britain, but it's no more there. The milkman and all of that, it's no more there. Because the world has since moved on from such things.
Yeah, but Emeka, in taking this discussion home, therefore, after 64 years of countryhood, nationhood, we're still trying to steady our steps. And so you look at a 64-year-old man and wonder why he, if you permit this, is still bedwetting.
Yes.
That something is basically wrong.
Yeah, that's the reason why people go to read medicine at the university, read nursing. You even have alternative medicine practitioners, we call native doctors, That's why people go for training. And then they go to medical school and they undergo residency. Because why? There is a problem of enuresis which is available to be solved. If there aren't medical problems, then doctors will be useless. So what I'm trying to say is that let's look at Nigeria as a cup. It doesn't matter whether it's empty or half full. Okay. There is a cup. What do you do with that cup? That's what matters.
Yeah, but I'm glad you identified with the classification. There are Puritans who will keep telling you that Mr. President's travels are junkets.
That's what I said. If you make sure that there are people who have no business being there, if you make sure that such people are not there, if they have to travel with the delegation, maybe for some other things, maybe shopping and all of that, fine. You create a space for them, not with the presidential jet. Let them pay their way. They want to go and whatever. Some of those vanities. I'm not saying that
Nigeria, France, for instance, is a 6-hour trip. So,
maybe politicians who just want to show a presence and all of that, they can pay their way. They can charter private jets, pay their way. Like members of the private sector, for instance, like NASIMA, like Manufacturing Association of Nigeria. Their members might say, okay, we want to be on this trip because, for instance, we want to leverage, on any contacts we can get from this. Such people will pay. But what I'm talking about is the people the government should pay for should not be more than the president and just a few aides.
Yeah.
No, because these meetings will be basically private sector based. I tell you what, the private sector knows how you are placed all over the world. If there are French businessmen who believe that they want to have a face-to-face with Nigerian businessmen, they will be willing to even sponsor them. Now, let me tell you what. Right now, France needs Nigeria more than Nigeria needs France. Because France is losing many friends in Africa.
Yeah.
And even around the world. It has lost Russia as a friend. You know, and then add to it Belarus, you know, which is standing with Russia. And then add to it Hungary, which also, you know, and all of that, you know. So, when you look at all of those things,
it reminds me of the Warsaw and NATO.
Yes, I believe that President Bola Tinubu should have actually insisted on Macron visiting Abuja, so that you could put it to him, hands on, that, well, Mr. President, look at the problems we have, but there are opportunities, there are economic opportunities, you know, and we're presenting them to you live. You could take him to 1 or 2 places, you know, to show him, let him see. Then going to South Africa, you see, we are the giant of Africa.
Emeka, I hope not on paper, because you know, as I do know, that South Africa is self-sufficient in terms of energy.
Yes.
Electricity, for instance.
Us. You see, that's why I said...
And the bulk of the energy in South Africa is coal-driven.
Yes, but do you know South Africa is having problems now? It was recently that they discovered that whether 60,000 subscribers were not paying. So the same problems with Nigeria. But the thing is that let's not deceive ourselves that there won't be problems in any system. Every system has problems. But what you plan to deal with those problems, turn them to opportunities. If 60,000 are not paying, you know, in a place, instead of criminalizing them, you could give them the option of amnesty and say, okay, we will onboard you to the system, but we don't want such bad behavior anymore. You know, so then we are supposed to be, we are actually the giant of Africa. We've been delinquent, but nothing stops us. Nobody, we are not in chains. Nobody stops us from assuming a position afresh.
Except that there are people who will tell you that Nigeria like an elephant. Emeka, an elephant does not struggle to be big. It is born big.
Yes.
But here we are a snoring elephant.
Yeah, the elephant can wake up. Maybe the snore is induced by hunger. But the elephant can get, is in the wild, it can get what to eat. You know, the elephant can get moving. The point is this.
Yeah, it must be moving.
Our future, our destiny lies with us. We can no longer play the blame game, blaming others. At 64, we cannot be talking about colonialism, that independence came too early. Do you know independence should have even come much earlier? Not even at 1960. If, for instance, we had people like Awolowo, Zik, Ahmadu Bello, as at 1900, when the capital of southern Nigeria was removed from Calabar, and then Mabugad moved it to Lokoja, and all of that. If we had such nationalists, let me tell you, perhaps, maybe instead of all those conquests and all that, maybe
the trio you talked about were not there. And so there's nothing we could have done about it.
But we made some appreciable progress. By 1922, we are among the first nations in the world now, you know, in the modern world, to hold elections. The United States, we held general elections before the United States. Universal suffrage, you know, was, you know, we got it
1928?
No, 1922.
22, okay.
Yes, we got it before the United States. And that's a plus.
But we couldn't build on it.
Now, which is true, sadly true. But what of today? What are we doing today? By now.
But why does that explain why we are playing catch up? Yeah, we indeed are.
Playing catch up is not a bad thing, because in playing catch up, what you are doing is that you are revving your engines.
Yeah.
You know, maybe your engines have been idle for some time, so you check, you change the engine oil, you change certain things, you know, and then you start and you move. But the issue is, don't be caught snoring. Don't be caught stalled on the road. Keep moving.
I've heard the counter logic that our problem will be the population.
No.
Okay.
No. Population. Indonesia has more people than we.
Oh yeah.
Do. The United States has over 350 million people. You know the interesting thing? That's what I talked about productivity. The United States, I saw a story last week. The United States has 2 million farm workers. Out of them, 1 million are illegals. And so owners, you know, agricultural entrepreneurs have been talking to Donald Trump that please do not deport these illegals because it will affect the meat industry, it will affect many aspects of the agricultural industry. Now bring it home to Nigeria. That same figure, you know, of number of people are in IDP camps, internally displaced persons camps. Doing what? Because of conflict. Avoidably. So we can, if we can, for instance, ask from, you know, for help from France, ask for help from South Africa. Don't forget President Goodluck Jonathan actually used their mercenaries to push back Boko Haram, you know, successfully. We can ask for help for them, whether we like mercenaries or whether we like military assistance, one way or the other. Then if we can push away this thing, remember, we may say, okay, now we should have modern farming and all of that with tractors. Yes, but don't forget, citizens, the subsistence farmers have actually sustained our agriculture since before independence. So let's, if we grab one, we can, let's be
local balance. You know, let me go there. They say, as man they cry, now so they see road.
Yes.
You must, you are sobbing, but not where you are, know where you are sobbing to.
Yes.
Don't sob.
Let's keep moving. If we can get these people in the IDP camps who are predominantly farmers, if we can get them back, those causing problem in Benue, in Plateau, killing farmers and all that, if we can just remove them from agricultural communities and all of that.
Because we can?
We can.
Okay.
We can. If we can't, we have different diplomatic channels through the African Union, through the United Nations, different places. We can actually, like what we just achieved with Simon Ekpa, the self-styled prime minister, you know, he later called himself a content creator. What we achieved through diplomatic pressure on Finland. We can actually do things like that.
Yeah.
Let's say, for instance, we have a multinational joint task force and say, okay, fine. One problem is that it cannot move into nations like that. They can only stay on the border. So you can now say, okay, you can tweak the protocols, you know, establishing the MNJTF and say, okay, fine, you can push further. Because, for instance, there are 2 local governments in Borno State that the army, I understand the army has refused to go to. Because there was a time they made an incursion and they lost 120 soldiers in one day. So they don't want to go to those 2 local governments. But you see, if we can tweak it a bit and say, okay, South Africa, help us. We can reach out to Algeria, which actually defeated insurgency, and say, what help can you give us? Because don't forget that Algeria, you know, the Sahel comes from that way down. That what help can you give us?
Algeria, Mali,
down. Yes. So what help can you give us? We should not be looking only for food, eggs, and all those things. Let's also talk about securing our space. We can use diplomacy to lock the account of all these characters, whatever by whatever name in the north and the south,
render them immobile.
No, remove the oxygen. Well, we deprive them of the oxygen, which is financing. Of course, they're going to look for other things to do. But the point is this: like I say a lot. I say the messaging is as important as the message. If you are going to deliver a message to you, you know, in order to catch your attention, I must prepare my message in such a way that you'll be very interested. Say, oh, come in, please sit down. Let's have a conversation. But if my messaging is just casual, not well thought out, of course you're just going to take it as just bad.
Let me inject a little bit of something we're familiar with. When it is said the medium is the message.
Yes.
It's key.
Very important. When Mr. President must be seen at important global fora. It's very important.
Yeah.
I wasn't happy that he missed the United Nations General Assembly. No, you saw the very Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He went there and made a strong case.
Yeah.
Such fora, the World Economic Forum, United Nations General Assembly, some of all these important engagements. You know, the G20 summit, that was a big one. We were there. You know, let's be there. But the thing is this: let's have a think tank within government circles, within the presidency. You know, experienced people like Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, General Ike Nwachukwu, some of those experienced people, we bring them together and say, okay, please, like a think tank, You know, you don't have to announce it. It can be a loose think tank. I say, okay, please, Mr. President has so and so and so trips lined up.
How do we?
What can we push? What 3-5 things can we push? You know, so that we can get actual commitment, because Mr. President has been to Qatar, different places, but China and all that, but India and all, but so far he hasn't got concrete commitment. People can come sign MOUs with you, but they won't show any commitment to implementing them. But if you push your message vigorously, in terms of making your challenges look like economic opportunities, and they see it, you use data, you use figures, because those things are also missing. When the president talks generally, security, no, you need to punch the numbers.
All right, Emeka, let me look straight into the eye of the viewer. Dear viewer, the news is very simple. Mr. President has left France. He should be in South Africa as we speak. And of course, it is having to do with the bilateral cooperation talks and so on. Doesn't matter if you are a Puritan or a realist. We cannot live in isolation. Emeka, in taking this home, therefore, in the next 60 seconds, what would be your perspective here?
My perspective is that South Africa is a vital partner. The vital development partner
in progress.
Yes, South Africa has more investors, more investment in Nigeria than we have in South Africa. Even though the trade imbalance between us and South Africa favors us more. So we have more exports in terms of petroleum oils, and rubber to South Africa. So what can we do? What South Africa mainly exports to is soft power, entertainment, and then telecoms, But what we can do is that we can look at certain areas whereby we can increase. One of the things we exported over there, Dangote, cement, and then I think two Nigerian banks are in South Africa. But what we can do is to expand. Look at one bank said they were going to set up a branch in Paris, which is a major achievement. So you can get more Nigerian banks. If you can get more Nigerian banks, with having presence in Johannesburg, and then get more of our investors over there, whom, of course, the global thing is
this is not to say that we should not go there and misbehave.
No, I'm not talking of...
but I mentioned xenophobic threats the last time. It will be there, but South Africa has one thing we don't have. South Africa will not hesitate when it comes to punishing wrongdoing, bad behavior.
They will not. And we need to rise up to that challenge to make sure we implement the rule of law. But you see, for me, I think investment is in two ways. While we're looking for foreign direct investment, why are we not creating opportunities for our own businessmen to go to those countries, invest, and repatriate?
Make the most of it.
Repatriate funds to Nigeria. We see people from other countries, India and all that, they are here, they repatriate their funds. Some companies like Glaxo and the rest of them, because they cannot repatriate their funds, they've left. But our businessmen, let's engage in economic evangelism, what I call, if you permit that, economic evangelism, whereby we will let's coin some things about Nigerianness. And whether it's our culture, whether it's a dressing, whatever, is our music, take these things abroad. Let's have businessmen investing in those countries. Just like we've succeeded with Nigerians in diaspora. We use their remittances a lot. Let's also have bigger investors like Dangote, in the likes of Dangote, Lumelu, Jimovia. Bigger investors, let's have bigger investors like that. We target countries. Do you know the IMF, country report for Nigeria says that, some Nigerian banks, that their whole, their whole capitalization is more than the GDP of some African countries.
All right.
So what it means is that we have the capacity to actually go to those countries, invest and repatriate.
All right, we must apply the brakes here, but not before thanking you, Emeka Madonago, for your incisive
Thank you very much.
comments. So you've heard it. Mr. President is crossing the continent for bilateral cooperation. Is in South Africa, expectedly for our good. So, but here we give context to the story and context and clarity to the story, just so you know. We're done, and so on behalf of the Backroom Boys, this is yours sincerely, Citizen Jones Hussein, saying bye-bye now. Take care.